Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to The Explainer. I really wanted to put this together to cut straight through the absolute mountain of wellness noise out there. If you've spent literally any time online lately, you know exactly what I mean. We are constantly bombarded with complicated longevity protocols, insanely expensive biohacking gadgets, and diet advice that totally contradicts itself. But what does the science actually say? Well, let's strip away all the marketing fluff and look at the actual cellular biology of what our bodies need to genuinely thrive.
Here's a quick roadmap for where we're headed today. 1. A history of survival. 2. Surviving modern health myths. 3. The biology of aging. 4. The boring, powerful fundamentals. And 5. The missing link, connection.
All right, Section 1, a history of survival and how we stopped dying from germs.
It's actually wild to think about how recently everything changed for us. For the vast majority of human history, longevity wasn't about optimizing your morning routine or obsessively tracking your REM sleep. It was just a brutal game of survival against microscopic enemies we couldn't even see. In 1519, the microscope was invented, allowing us to finally see the germs that were taking us out. Then came these massive medical miracles, the smallpox vaccine in 1796, discovering penicillin in 1828 to fight off bacterial infections, and the first use of chloroform anesthesia in 1847, which finally made life-saving surgeries survivable. These milestones practically doubled our life expectancy. We conquered basic survival, but because of that, our focus has dramatically shifted. Now we aren't just trying to survive, we're trying to figure out what the heck to do with all these extra decades.
Which brings us to Section 2, Surviving Modern Health Myths, and the problem with optimizing. Since we aren't fighting off basic infections on a daily basis anymore, our obsession with health has basically spawned this massive, totally overwhelming industry. To highlight the absurdity of modern wellness marketing, I absolutely love this deeply sarcastic quote from one of our sources: "The more oil you have in your car, the less likely it is to break down. If you do have too much oil in your car, you can add the excess to your overnight oats, because motor oil is also high in antioxidants." It's hilarious, right? But it exposes a huge myth: the idea that if a little bit of something is good, an extreme amount must be better. We've been sold this crazy idea that we can just drink a magical superfood smoothie to literally flush toxins right out of our bodies, which, biologically speaking, makes absolutely zero sense. I mean, if you had lethal toxins in your blood, a handful of blueberries wouldn't save you.
And that extreme thinking applies completely to our modern diet culture, too. Just think about the chaotic world of diets we have to navigate today. Every single one has distinct pros and cons. Veganism is sustainable and great for animals, but you might struggle with macronutrients in certain social settings. Keto regulates blood sugar, but unless you're carrying a pepperoni holster for your ultramarathon, the lack of carbs makes intense sports really tough. Carnivore might help with certain autoimmune issues, but peeling the breading off your chicken at a restaurant is a pretty fast way to make people stare at you. The point here is that there are no magical answers. Weight regulation generally comes down to calories in versus calories burned, and finding a sustainable balance is what actually matters at the end of the day.
Let's move on to Section 3, the biology of aging, and finding the truth in our cells.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that for years, we've basically been sold a massive lie. The idea that longevity is purely just genetic luck. That if your grandfather lived to 90 while smoking a pack a day, you can too. But the research actually shows that genetics only account for 20 to 30% of your lifespan. A massive 70 to 80% comes down entirely to your lifestyle choices. So, genetics might load the gun, but your environment and your daily habits, they pull the trigger. You have an incredible amount of power over how your body ages.
And what I found totally fascinating here is the vital distinction between your chronological age and your biological age. Chronological age is simply the number printed on your passport, but biological age is what your cells are actually doing right now. You can take two 60-year-olds and they can have biological ages that are 15 years apart. One has cells functioning like a 45-year-old and the other like a 75-year-old. And that gap is driven entirely by their cellular habits. So how do we actually influence those cellular habits? Well, the first major mechanism is a process called autophagy. Think of it as the cellular equivalent of housekeeping. Over time, your cells naturally accumulate damage and worn-out proteins. Autophagy is your body's internal system that finds this junk, breaks it down, and recycles it into fresh building blocks so your cells stay perfectly clean and efficient.
And this brilliantly illustrates how we actually turn that housekeeping system on. Autophagy ramps up when your body senses mild, intermittent stress. You can trigger this by doing things like fasting for 12 to 16 hours overnight, allowing yourself to experience short periods of moderate hunger instead of just grazing constantly. doing exercise that genuinely challenges your physical limits, and exposing yourself to temperature variations. Think cold showers or hot saunas. These mild stresses signal to your cells that it's time to clean up and get prepared for challenges.
Section 4. The boring, powerful fundamentals. Building the compound effect.
Let's start with movement. Most of us assume exercise means either super intense gym sessions where you're totally gasping for air, or just a really casual stroll. But the people who age the slowest utilize something called Zone 2 training. This is moving at a moderate, sustained pace where your heart rate is elevated, but you can still comfortably hold a conversation.
And here is exactly why Zone 2 is so absolutely crucial. This moderate effort physically multiplies your mitochondria. Those are your cell's energy factories. It rebuilds your metabolic flexibility, which basically teaches your body to seamlessly use fat for fuel. Best of all, it keeps your energy really steady without causing a massive cortisol stress spike. It's kind of like gently expanding a factory's capacity without completely burning out the workers.
Now let's talk about food, but actually not what you eat, when you eat. Your body operates on a series of local cellular clocks, especially down in your digestive system. When you eat at wildly different times every single day, those local clocks fall entirely out of phase with your brain's central clock. Researchers actually call this metabolic jet lag.
To combat this, consistency beats intensity every time. The science clearly shows that your body values predictable fuel arrival way more than highly restrictive fad diets. Eating your meals at roughly the same time daily, keeping the bulk of your food earlier in the day, and probably most importantly, preventing chronic grazing, keeps all your biological clocks perfectly synchronized. When you stop that constant snacking, you allow your digestion to rest and your metabolism gets to function exactly how it's supposed to.
And that exact same concept of rhythm applies perfectly to your sleep, which introduces a phenomenon known as social jet lag. This happens when your sleep schedule is all over the place, like going to bed at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday, but 2 a.m. on a Saturday. This creates an internal confusion that literally accelerates biological aging. It's basically like a chaotic train station where the schedule changes every day. The trains might still arrive, but nothing connects properly, and the whole system just slowly breaks down over time.
So, how do we fix this chaotic schedule? The actionable steps are actually super straightforward. Keep a consistent 30-minute sleep window, yes, even on the weekends. Keep your room cool, ideally between 65 and 68 degrees. Get natural morning light in your eyes immediately after waking up to reset your circadian clock. And just as importantly, practice stress recovery. Notice I said recovery, not elimination. Using slow breathing to return to a calm baseline improves your heart rate variability, which allows your nervous system to bounce back from stress faster so it doesn't linger and prematurely age your cells. Next, we really have to talk about this specific number, 1%. It's a pretty alarming statistic, honestly. Past the age of 40, if you do not deliberately maintain it, you lose roughly 1% of your muscle mass every single year.
We completely need to reframe how we view muscle. It is not just about aesthetics or looking good, it is a highly active metabolic organ. Muscle actively releases these signaling molecules called myokines, which reduce overall inflammation and actually support brain health. It acts as this incredible reservoir that stores essential nutrients, and it regulates your blood sugar. Muscle is basically your body's resilience armor against illness and stress. So resistance training isn't about looking like a bodybuilder. It's a non-negotiable requirement for protecting your health span as you age.
Which brings us to Section 5, the missing link, connection, and the biological necessity of others.
So the crucial point here is a truly shocking parallel found by researchers. Chronic social isolation produces severe cellular inflammation and mortality risks that are comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. No way, right? But loneliness literally keeps the body in a low-grade chronic state of stress. Conversely, deep face-to-face social connections, those real relationships where you don't have to perform, where you are truly known, they physically reduce inflammatory signaling in your body. Human connection literally changes your biology.
So let's quickly summarize the map we've laid out today. Trigger autophagy, sustain your zone 2 movement, eat rhythmically, maintain your muscle mass, keep your sleep consistent, actively recover from stress, and foster deep social connections. You don't need to biohack. You really don't need insanely expensive supplements. You just need the compound interest of these natural human defaults to keep your biological age much, much lower than your chronological age.
I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought. Think about those 7 habits again. Which of them are you most out of alignment with right now? Look, we all have a weak link, a system that just needs a little more attention. But the real beauty of this science is that your cells are incredibly forgiving, and they respond to positive changes at literally any age. It's never too late to start signaling to your biology that it's time to build, repair, and thrive. Take that one habit you know you need to work on and start your longevity journey today. Thanks so much for joining me on The Explainer.